Hi everyone, and welcome to A Nightbird. It's February, I know, so it's the first one of the year. So belatedly, I would like to wish you all a happy new year. It's been really not a very nice start to the year for us, unfortunately. We've all been ill, and it's really just been one thing after another. So it started with just normal things like a cold, and Luca and I in particular were very sick with one virus after another. And I don't know about you guys, but I mean, a cold I can handle, but stomach viruses, I hate stomach viruses. I've only been getting them really since I've had Luca. I used to also have them as a child, but I had this whole time where I never got any stomach viruses, and I kind of put them behind me and thought it's something that adults don't really get. But as soon as there's a child around, of course, that changes. And it seems that always Hendrik avoids them somehow. But the stomach virus part was just awful. And so first, luckily I was able to support Luca because he had it first, and then I got it after he'd got better. Otherwise, I really don't know what we would have done. Because I just felt so awful. I don't think that I could have helped him. We would have just both been lying there. I was lucky to have also my mother-in-law come along and help when I got sick, and she got sick too, I'm afraid. I did say to her, you've got to be so careful and wash your hands every 5 minutes. I mean, I was doing the same thing, but these viruses are just they're so strong, and so that wasn't very nice. And I don't know why the men kind of avoid it often. I've talked to other families and it seems to be the same, but Hendrik also had the cold, and it was one of those colds that just lasts for ages. And poor Luca was the worst thing for him was the coughing in the night. That he was waking up 3 or 4 times in the night coughing, and of course then that meant that nobody slept, and then he had this uncontrollable temperature. Later on in the month he still wasn't right, and then he had this really high temperature one evening, and I was up with him all night trying to bring his temperature down, and the next morning he still had a temperature. And luckily on that day Hendrik was doing home office, so he was here, because I don't know what I would have done without him, because Luca started shaking, and I tried my best to be calm and just to help him and everything, but then he really had a full-on seizure because of the high temperature. And so I just said to Hendrik, please call an ambulance now. And I was really glad to know, actually, that because we are in the middle of nowhere here, kind of, and it has always kind of been a worry for me. What if something goes wrong? How quickly can people get here? And they were here very quickly, within 10 minutes. And the only problem is the nearest hospital is a bit far away, but I think once they're here they can treat you, and they really kind of managed to reassure us that a seizure in a child of his age with a high temperature is not that unusual, and that he'll probably be fine, and that we'll take him to the hospital now, and we'll try to sort out all of these things that are wrong. And in the end, being in the hospital was a good thing, because we'd been a few times to the doctors, but I think at this time of year a lot of children are ill, and a lot of mums are ill as well, and they can't really gauge how bad it is, and also neither could we, and in the end, being in the hospital, we were able to get the blood test. We were able to they fed him intravenously, because he had actually lost quite a lot of weight, and I was kind of relieved to know that he was really being cared for, and we were coming forward with everything. And Yeah, and I was also very thankful for my knitting during this time. It's great to have a hobby like that when you're in a situation like being in hospital with your child. It's soothing, not just for me, but for him as well. And also maybe even the other mums that were there. So there were a lot of sick children there, and of course then you kind of bond with the people there, and they also kind of asked me about my knitting, and even showed someone how to knit. Hopefully, I don't know if they'll actually take it up, but yeah, and slowly I saw him get better. We did a lot of story reading together. And I really think his English is getting better now. Also because in the hospital I let him watch things. I took my laptop with me and we watched Peppa Pig, which seemed to really help him actually with his English. I didn't really show him things before because he's a bit too little, but I think now he's at the age where he can. And it really helped him learn. I was amazed at what a step he took with his English by watching sort of children's TV programs. And now, thankfully, we're all back to health, pretty much. We're just sort of trying to recover from. It's kind of depressing, just being at home and in the hospital and just being constantly ill. So we kind of want to put the January behind us and try to recover and get our spirits back up. And yesterday we had a really nice day because Hendrik's mum came again to look after Luca, and Hendrik and I were able to go out for a walk in the woods. We did 3.5 hours it was such a lovely afternoon. It was a special day because it had been snowing 2 days before and it had been very cold, but the sun had come out. So actually today there's no snow. So yesterday was the snow was just melting and the sun was shining through the trees, and it was just such a lovely setting for a walk because you saw the beauty of the snow in the trees, but it was also not that cold, and you also saw the sun shining through. And I think that's kind of an unusual thing to have. So we picked sort of the only day of the year when it was like that, and it was very healing and very nice for us as well, just to spend a bit of time together talking and kind of getting over the heavy month that we had. Yes, but Christmas was nice. The last time I spoke to you was before Christmas, and I told you my hopes for Christmas, and it was lovely. It was really everything I'd hoped for, and my parents came and they had a great time, and Luca really loved it, and he's still talking about Christmas and asking when it's going to come again. So I think he needs to get used to this, having a year in between Christmases. But yeah, it was wonderful. And New Year was also wonderful here. Another thing that made me think that being in a village is lovely. We didn't really know what would be happening. We kind of thought probably nothing because it's this wood with houses here and there. But every single neighbour had fireworks. And we didn't know what was to be expected, so we didn't have fireworks, but we kind of didn't need them because they were just all around. And then people went out onto the streets and just looking to shake hands with people and wish them a happy New Year. And it was really perfect. That's the kind of way I'd like to start New Year. In the city, it can be a bit too hectic. In Berlin, people really throw fireworks, and people get hurt every year, whereas here it was like, people having a nice firework display in their garden who kind of knew what they were doing. But it was really nice that it was sort of scattered around the woods. So that was really nice. A nice New Year full of hope. Unfortunately, a not very nice January, but we're ready to move on now. And I'm ready to show you the things that I've been knitting next. Although I gave the leg warmers that I'd started last time to my mother for Christmas, they were, to remind you, they're by Gudrun Johnston in her Shetland Trader series. She has a pair of leg warmers called Miri Dancers, lacy, warm kind of And I just started them, I think, last time, and they were a gift from my mother, who really, she loved it. And I have to admit that I really enjoyed knitting these leg warmers. I felt quite proud of myself because I was able to do this lace, and I don't know, I think maybe my brain has just changed from, the last year. I mean, as you know, I started this podcast as a sort of semi-experienced knitter. I'm not kind of like a knitting guru who can give you a lot of wisdom. I'm more kind of growing with you and learning with you, I hope. But I definitely feel as though I have really learned a lot when I look back on when I started this podcast. Actually, it's been a year. Definitely lace was always a problem for me. I always just got really frustrated because I would, without fail, make a mistake. And making a mistake in lace is not easy to correct. So it's learning, first of all, not to make mistakes, and then it's also learning how to correct mistakes, and just thinking of ways that you can avoid it. And I think it's just a combination of many different things. You just have to be more experienced. I couldn't tell a person who just started knitting lace how not to make a mistake. You can give them some tips, but in the end, they are going to make mistakes, and it is going to be the only way that they really learn, which is kind of my story. And without knowing it, I think I've come to a point now where, okay, I'm not an expert, but I can confidently knit a lace pattern. I've got more of the mindset for it, that I start to see the rhythm, I start to see how it should look. I realise much sooner if I make a mistake, it just seems off. Sometimes before I would knit a few rows and then I think, no, this doesn't look right, So that was one of the reasons I enjoyed knitting these leg warmers. Also, I don't know, and maybe it depends what you're doing. I think sometimes that is a big factor. It's what were you doing when you knit these things? And I was watching Outlander when I knit these, and so for my mom's leg warmers, I was pretty much watching Outlander the whole time. And then when I started on mine this month, I kind of knew what I was doing. So here's the first one. I made them a bit shorter than the pattern suggests because I usually wear boots, and I just kind of want some that I can put over my boots and to be below the knee, because that part of my leg always gets cold. And I've started on the second one. I'm using the same yarn as I used for Mum because it worked well. And I actually, for my mom, because I used alpaca, I've got a lot of it in my stash. I had a kind of thing for alpaca at one point when I started buying yarn. And it's meant to be done in wool. My mum doesn't like wool, so I used alpaca. And because it worked well, I thought I would make a matching pair for myself, because I kind of basically had the exact amount of yarn left over of that alpaca, so we can be leg warmer twins, me and my mum. So that I really enjoyed. What else have I made? One finished item was Luca's Christmas present, and I love this, and it's also one of those things where I can say I'm really proud that I did this. It's warm. Luca loves it. He knows I made it for him, and he tells people, which I really love. I love the yarn, was this Rowan tweed. I have to confess as well, though, that with this project, it happened to me yet again that I came on the border with running out of yarn. And that's another thing I think I need a bit more experience with to learn. I know it says in the pattern, but you also need to have a feeling when you buy yarn. You sometimes just buy yarn not with no pattern in mind. You think something like I did with this one. I thought I'm going to make a sweater for Luca. But you don't know which sweater. I mean, this one has quite a lot of cables, so that's also something to take into consideration. And I did end up having enough yarn. Maybe I would have made the sleeves a bit longer though. They are just right, but it's quite baggy, and it could last him until next winter if I had a bit more yarn. So I actually think I might buy some more when I go home. I ended up, that was another silly thing, is that I actually bought it in England, and I don't know where I can buy this in Germany. Yeah, so maybe I will next time I go back. I do plan to go to England at some point, maybe in Easter, because I haven't been for a whole year. And then maybe I'll buy another skein of this yarn so that next winter I can perhaps just kind of let these out a bit and lengthen the arms so that it lasts another winter. But yes, I also really enjoyed knitting this, and it was challenging, but not too challenging that I got frustrated. It was just right. And I also knit this I just in time for Christmas. It did get a little bit stressful with my mum's leg warmers as well. Actually, I hadn't finished the leg warmers when my mum arrived, and I ended up sort of having to, in the evenings before I went to bed, just kind of finish them off a little bit. But I managed to get it all done. So, so those were the Christmas presents. I also made some socks for Hendrik, not for Christmas, but just I don't know if you remember the family socks that I made. I made us all some matching red family socks for last Christmas. So we've had them a year now, and we wear them a lot. And Hendrik and I both got holes in ours, and I've repaired the holes in mine, which is actually it's been quite a successful repair. I don't really know how people normally repair, because my hole was kind of right at the bottom here, and I ended up kind of making a sort of like a sort of weaving thing. I sort of set up at each side of the thing so that I could weave, and I kind of made a woven patch, but it worked. So but with Hendrik's, the hole is a bit bigger, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to do that one. But I made him a new pair anyway with just a basic sock yarn from ED, which is where I get a lot of my yarn. It's kind of a German creative shop. And I didn't do anything fancy, just made a normal sock, because it's been a while since I've knit a sock. But I have to say, I kind of I started to get a kind of my passion back for knitting socks, and I thought, why has it been so long since I've done socks? And I would kind of like to do some more if I find the time. I've got a lot of things planned at the moment with my knitting, so I don't want to be too ambitious. But these are good for just wearing around the house with slippers, and until I repair the favourites, the red ones. He's very happy with those. Yes, you already know this one. This I tend to show you, and then sometimes I think, why did I even show it, because it just doesn't look any different than last time. But I think you'll see that there is quite a difference this time. This is Bonnie by Tin Can Knits, and I'm using this special yarn from Nature's Luxury, which is made of like a mixture of camel and I forget, but I'll put it in the show notes. Lovely colour, and I'm getting to the point now where it could start to get interesting soon, because I've got to do the collar, and that's why it's taken me such a long time, because it's not that exciting just doing stockinette for ages. But it was definitely a good thing in the hospital when I wasn't feeling sort of quite with it. I think just doing stockinette was just really fine. So I made quite a lot of progress on that in the hospital. Maybe I hope this month I really want to get onto the next bit, so I can really show you what it will be, because up until now all I'm showing you is a tube, And the last thing that I'm working on is, well, it's Hendrik's birthday coming up, and I want to make him a hat, because I have made him a hat before and he does wear it, but I don't think he really likes it. and he would never say that, you know. And also, I don't really like it anymore. I made it, you know, a few years ago when I was less experienced, and I would have used a different yarn, and I would have used a different pattern. So it's not terrible. And I made a matching hat for Luca for when he was really little. So, and they don't match anymore because he's too big now. So it's time for a new hat. And this time I think instead of going for the beanie type hat that this was, I'm going to go for a more baggy style. I've been looking at patterns, and I think that I'm going to use Tin Can Knits from Pacific Knits called the Hipster. So I don't think it's a very complicated pattern. I should be able to make it to his birthday if I start today or tomorrow. And I should be able to really just show you the finished item, hopefully, next time. And what else I'm making is, this doesn't look like anything because it's going to be felted. And I'm just making it up. It's he has, so in his office here, so he sometimes works from home. That was one of the reasons that we were able to move out here, because, you know, having to commute every day is quite a lot. And so he can do home office a couple of times a week. And sometimes, so he really shuts the, you know, because if we're playing around and stuff, it doesn't really work. So he shuts the door here, and around lunchtime, when the people are having their lunch, sometimes he'll take a nap. And he's got a little bunk bed in his office. And he always complains that he forgets, and he has his mobile phone in his pocket and his wallet or some, you know, important things with him, and then he goes up to the high bed and there's nowhere to put his stuff, and he's scared that his phone will fall down onto the floor and so on. So what the idea of this is I'm going to make like a pouch. So it starts off with a long bit and then turns into a pouch, and the long bit will be able to fold it over with buttons because there are bars, and hopefully he can hook it round, and then it's like a little pouch for his stuff. So it's a simple idea, but I think it's more of a kind of useful thing, and he likes that with presents. He likes to have things that are useful, and I hope he doesn't watch this. Actually, I'll tell him not to. So a couple of homemade things for Hendrik, hopefully for his birthday, and also Valentine's Day is going to be. It's always a thing with us. We're not really sure what to do on Valentine's Day because it's so near to his birthday, and it's not such a thing. Definitely not for him, because it wasn't never a tradition in East Germany to have Valentine's Day. But I think we will do something. But I don't think there'll be any handmade. Well, I'll probably make a card, and he'll probably buy a card because, you know, I don't want to force him to hand make things when it's not his thing. But yeah, I'll probably post a picture of the handmade card like I did last year. With regards to other things, other crafting things, I haven't done a lot. I've been mainly knitting. I think that during times like this, I am more into knitting, you know, like with illness and that type of thing. Sewing is a bit more, you have to have a lot more energy to do sewing. And I think with knitting you can relax. But I have, I'm still a member of this quilting group that I've told you about, and it's gone a bit quiet. We used to meet every month, and the idea was to get this blanket done in 12 months, but we had a few breaks because some people went on holiday, and then we kind of agreed we can just make it a bit longer. I really enjoy it. We always get together and have cake and everything. And although I've moved out, it's still possible for me to, you know, it's not even once a month, so I can make it. And I've been given, so this I've had for a while. But this will be for the next meetup, which will be this month, and I really love the fabrics on this. So these are the squares that have been done so far. Not none of them are by me, but I'm just showing you because of the fabrics. And I love how, you know, there's sort of a main theme, but like people add their own ideas and their own fabrics to it. I've been looking at fabrics that I might use, and I've got these two. I've only got a little bit of this. This is a scrap that I got, but I think it will go nicely with those. And then there's this, which I got in a charity shop, which is kind of, I'm not really sure if I even like it, but you know, it was one of those things where I was charity shopping and I saw this big sheet of fabric, and I thought, and it was, you know, really cheap, and I thought maybe I can do something with it, because often with patchwork I don't necessarily like every fabric that goes into it. It's a different type of thing, you know, like you have to choose fabrics that will work, and sometimes even if you don't like it, you wouldn't like it as a whole piece. It kind of works. So this definitely, I think, works as a sort of accent fabric for the others. And I'll show that to you. I should be able to show that to you next time. I've also decided as well that because, you know, I started late in the year, and how I felt about it last year, doing it each month, sometimes I felt that I wanted to do it more often than once a month. And then there were other times where, you know, something went wrong technically or something, and then I was a bit late. So I think I'm going to sort of scrap the idea of it being definitely once a month, and just do it, you know, maybe twice a month, or, you know, and it will just come, and if you subscribe, then, you know, you'll know that there's something up, and I'll always post it as well on Ravelry. Yeah, and another thing I did is I showed you this before on a picture, and now I actually got it finished. And I chose a different fabric, but I'm really pleased with how it turned out. And I ended up just sewing it to the wicker, the broken wicker that was underneath, with big stitches. Maybe I can show you that a little bit closer. I don't know if you can see it. So using thread. So I made a feature out of that. And I think it was quite a nice way to rescue a broken chair, and I'm pleased with that. And it's actually now become my crafting chair. Yeah, so that's all I've been doing since last time, which is kind of quite a lot, I guess. Hopefully next month will be as impressive, but we'll see. I'll tell you next what kind of things I've been watching and reading and enjoying. One more piece of news as well is I want to thank as well the people who asked after my mum, and I almost don't want to tell you, or I feel embarrassed to say that she still doesn't have a diagnosis. It's almost unbelievable to me that somebody can partially lose their sight and not, you know, kind of get the doctors on the case, you know, sort of, but I don't want to be too political or kind of complain. You know, I know that the doctors try their best to do a great job. I also know that they don't get paid a lot in England. We have a bit of a crisis at the moment. But at the same time, I want the best for my mum, and she has, since October, she has been partially sighted, and pretty much nothing has been done about it, apart from, of course, they did the tests for the obvious things. And because they then didn't know, you know, because it wasn't anything obvious, sort of like glaucoma or anything like that, you know, that they could easily diagnose, they're really baffled as to what it is. And she keeps having hope that whenever she has a doctor's appointment, which you have to wait quite a long time for, that, you know, they'll have some answers for her. But it seems almost insane that every time she has a doctor's appointment, nothing further is explained or anything. It's really more like, we really don't know what's wrong with you, you know. So the next appointment she has is in March. It's another thing that, you know, she has to wait, because I guess they don't really think that going blind is is as, I mean, of course there are things that are more serious, I know, and I would, some people are really dying, and but I still think that she she hasn't had any psychological help. I think going blind is frightening, and she hasn't had any support apart from her family, and it makes me think, what happens to people who don't have a family around them? How on earth do they get the treatment that they deserve? So anyway, I'm really not happy about that, and of course, when I know something, I'll tell you. I really feel like I just kind of expected when I told you the first time that in a few weeks' time I'd be able to tell you what the answer was. And the same with anyone else I've told. People keep asking me, so how's your mum? And every time I have to say, yeah, it's the same. They have no idea. But she's strong, and we're there for her, and thankfully it hasn't got any worse. So yes, while she was here, Mum and I watched a few films together, and I must admit there was one film that had quite a profound effect on me. It was called A Summer Story, and I must admit that halfway through this film I thought, if I wasn't watching this with Mum, I would be bored by now. I probably would turn it off. It was a sort of romance, and it was pretty predictable. It was made in the 80s, and I don't know, I kind of thought I knew how the story was going to be and everything, but it picked up, and it had a surprising ending. Well, I thought it was surprising and shocking, and really, we were both crying, and it made me think about it a lot afterwards. So I won't tell you what happens in case you want to have a look at this film. I would say stick with it. It does get a bit boring, but it's worth it, and it says something, I think, about people, and so yeah, that was a and even my brother and my father ended up watching it, and they said the same, that they were bored, but at the end they thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. So I was also really happy to watch, and Mum too, we watched Downton Abbey, the Christmas special, and the Call the Midwife. So yeah, she's able to watch things. I mean, she can't really see them, but she can kind of get the general, of what's going on, and also obviously audio helps. So it's nice. I mean, she can still do that, but certainly things like reading or knitting is not possible for her, which is a shame, because she just really started getting into knitting. Yes, and now I'm kind of feeling like I don't have anything to watch. Hendrik and I actually ended up starting Mad Men again, because that was always our thing. That was the first thing that we really watched together, because Hendrik always said that he wasn't into series, and then we tried watching Mad Men, and we kind of both got into it. And yeah, we finished the series, of course, and now we're kind of watching it from the beginning. And it's nice to watch it from the beginning, because I find it a little complicated, and so does Hendrik, because of the, it's not his language, so it's helpful to watch it again. And I'm getting actually quite a lot out of it the second time round. So I don't always feel that way about series. Sometimes I feel I'm done. I don't want to watch them again. But this one, yeah, it's working pretty well watching it for the second time. So I think I'll finish there. And I want to say that yeah, if sometimes people ask me questions about the content and so on, and I always do write show notes, which you find under the video on my website. But if I've forgotten anything, then please do remind me. Sometimes I there have been a couple of occasions where I've missed something, and then I can sort of add it if I make a mistake. But I do try to kind of, especially when I forget things, when I'm actually filming, they're usually found in the show notes underneath. And any comments would be most appreciated. So I'd love to know what you all think, and yeah, it's nice to know what works, what doesn't work, and what kind of things people enjoy. So I really do appreciate all of your comments, all of your messages, and yeah, and I do try as well. Most of the time I will write back to everybody. The only time was really this month when I was so worried about Luca. I didn't really I wasn't really contacting anybody, so I'm sorry to anybody who wrote to me and I didn't reply. But normally I take the time to do it, even if it's a little bit, a few weeks or a few days, hopefully only. But I don't know when will be my next podcast, but I expect it will be sometime in February. And until then, enjoy your knitting and crafting, and I look forward to speaking to you later. Goodbye.